Hi there, my name is Amanda Mirabella. I am a master mind body spirit release practitioner and lead instructor at the Mind Body Spirit Release Academy. And joining me today is Dr. Jen Rochlis. And Dr. Jen, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me, Amanda. My name is Dr. Jennifer Rochlis, and I was a physics major in college, and I studied quantum physics as my favorite topic for sure. I went to MIT for graduate school where I have my master's and PhD in aerospace. And after that, spent about 19 years, almost 20 years at NASA doing human spaceflight work, which I absolutely loved. And then about 3 years ago, transitioned away from government service to the corporate world. And I'm now the vice president for products and solutions at a defense technology company doing some unmanned robotic systems. And on the side, the reason I know Amanda is because I'm also a mind body spirit release practitioner. And I have my own company where I do coaching and consulting. I'm also a human design practitioner and a Reiki practitioner. So a little bit of everything.
Yes, you can see why I'm just overjoyed to have Dr. Jen here today. She's brilliant and the perfect person to kind of walk us through all this. So we are coming together to discuss energy work and quantum physics because, as Jen said, we are both mind body spirit release practitioners, which is a modality that relies heavily on virtual muscle testing. So many of our clients are new to energy work, and we wanted to take the time to dive into these topics a bit more. So Dr. Jen, I think most people have heard the expression that everything is energy, but can you help us actually understand what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. So indeed, everything is energy, everything in the universe. We in the scientific community started out as in a Newtonian way of thinking, a Newtonian view of the world, where we thought there was matter and then there was energy, two different things. But the quantum physics view started emerging in the early 19th century, and it's now been proven that, yes, indeed, everything is in fact just energy. And the importance of that is we as humans are really just big bundles of energy and vibration, and we have our own unique energy field or energy signature. And so, one important principle relating to energy is that energy is neither created nor destroyed, it just simply changes form. And we have a lot of different forms of energy in our bodies. We have electrical energy, chemical energy, biological energy, we have kinetic energy, and all of these can be converted in our bodies into different forms depending on how we need them. So once we understand that we're all energy beings, the next piece of the puzzle I think that we need to bring in is the concept of waves. Waves work by transmitting energy through a vibration. So in the case of electromagnetic waves, which you see the spectrum here, what's vibrating are electric and magnetic fields. When you have a sound wave, for example, what's vibrating are the particles in the air that vibrate to transfer the energy and carry the sound. So you're all probably very aware of a lot of the waves that you see on this slide. You can see visibly ocean waves, visible light waves, and there are a lot that you can't see, like X-rays or ultraviolet sun rays, where we know that they exist and we can see the effects, but we can't actually see them. And when we talk about this spectrum and the visible spectrum, you'll see is just a tiny, tiny fraction of all the waves that are out there that we're living in and amongst. But I do want to mention vibration in a little more detail. So we'll talk about vibration and frequency because this comes up quite a bit in your mind, body, spirit release training. And it'll be helpful to you as a practitioner as well. So there's a universal law of vibration, the second universal law of vibration, which does state that everything is made up of energy and it's in constant motion or always vibrating. And vibration is just something that's moving or cycling around an equilibrium point. So you can see kind of the waves that are created here as you vibrate or move something around an equilibrium. And we describe it, the wave, in terms of a frequency. So how many cycles per second? How many times is it going up and down around that equilibrium? That's how we measure the frequency of it. So the fact that something vibrates at all means it's in motion, and then how quickly or slowly it vibrates tells us the frequency of that. So when it comes to us as human beings, our own energy signature is related to our overall frequency, or said another way, the energy that our waves are vibrating at. And you can see here in the picture the energy that different waves are vibrating at for different other parts of the spectrum. So you'll often hear the terms like high vibe or raise your vibe. And what that really means is raise the frequency of your energy waves.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jen. Would you tell us a little bit more about the term you just used, energy signature?
So this picture, I like this picture. It's a good indication of sort of the complexity of our energy signature. Just like the Earth has an electromagnetic field, we do too. And you can see sort of a depiction of that here. Most of us have also heard of the chakra system, our energy centers. And you'll see those depicted here as well if you notice the different colors, the red, orange, yellow, green, blue chakras in the photograph or in the picture with the human. And those also create an energy pattern. And in fact, our chakras are really just bundles of cells and concentrations of cells in our body that govern various body systems. And that's what creates those energy patterns. And that's why we talk about the chakras being related to our body systems in those ways. But our entire body is vibrating. And as I mentioned before, we have our own energy signature. It's what we're giving off at any moment. It's this bundle, this whole package that you can see here in this picture. Our aura is likely another term that you've heard to describe it. But how it works physically, for example, in your body, is that we have electrical and biochemical energy in our cells, our tissues, our organs, in our mitochondria, which you've probably heard throughout your training. We can also add energy to our existing system. When we eat food, for example, we convert that food into chemical energy that can be used by our bodies. So for example, our muscles take that chemical energy and convert it into kinetic energy so that it can move. And that's how we transfer energy in and out of our system, for example. So we'll eat some food, we'll translate it into chemical energy, which moves into kinetic, which moves out into the world as we move our bodies. So we can have energy flowing into our systems, flowing out of our systems, and flowing around in our systems. And we'll get back to the concept of flow in a few minutes, because that's also very important. We can also store energy. I'm certainly familiar with having stored energy throughout my life, but in all seriousness, storing energy is also really important, as we'll talk later and in other videos, Amanda, that you and I are going to do about stored emotions. So we talked about the physical piece of the energy signature. I want to look at the emotional and mental component of that as well. So our mind, our thoughts are actually electrochemical energy, and emotions are just energy in motion. So emotion, energy in motion is a good way to think of it. Our brain, when we see the world, when we interact with the world, we're taking in information through our senses. And when we do that, it doesn't mean anything just yet, but our brain assigns meaning to it based on our experiences, our life history, our genetics, and so forth. And it assigns an emotion to match what we're seeing. And then that emotion is the trigger that says, these are the chemicals that you need in your body to match that. So we get flooded with all of these signals when this happens. So for example, we feel stressed or anxious, and our body is flooded with hormones like cortisol, so that we can prepare ourselves to fight, flight, or freeze. When we're in love, we're flooded with chemicals like serotonin and dopamine and oxytocin. And you can feel this, right? You can feel people's energies when they walk into the room and they're having a bad day, and we all feel it. And when someone's in love and they're just so giddy, they just can't help it. We can understand that. And so what's important here too about our energy signatures is that they extend out around us, and you'll see that clearly in the picture here. And it interacts with other people's energy fields as well. So we're always interacting with our environment and with other people. So what I want to end with on this topic is, please recognize that our thoughts, our beliefs, our personal story, our memories, our genetics, our physical makeup, all of that contributes to our current state of health and wellness in any given moment. And all of this creates the sum total of the energy waves that are interacting. And like, for example, in this picture, and thus our energy signature. So in physics terms, we'd say it's the summation of how all our waves are interfering constructively or destructively that result in the emitting energy field. Or said another way, our energy signature is really the expression of our physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental health and wellness in any moment.
That was so beautiful. And you can hear it in the name of Mind, Body, Spirit Release, right? We're talking about the intersection of the mental, emotional, how they really all are connected. So I just want to go back to that, and you need to rewatch that, what Dr. Jen just dissected, but the energy signature is such an important term, I think, that encapsulates that combination that you're talking about. So thank you. And that was one of the goals for our discussion, was to help provide practical examples for these concepts in hopes that they seem a little bit less obscure, which brings me to muscle testing. Now, muscle testing, we have other resources and information on our website about, goes into a little bit more detail about what that is, but I'll give you a quick overview. So muscle testing is a key part of MBSR. And what that means is it measures the natural stress response in the body. It's called binary biofeedback. So that's the measure of the body's response to a stimulus. So our muscles are controlled by our nerves, and therefore our muscles in the body will respond differently to different nerve messages, right? So because of this, we have the ability to use muscle strength as a way to understand what the nervous system is trying to tell us. So by tapping into the nervous system, we can understand different imbalances in the body. So people have seen this before. A lot of times the avenue they see this is by using muscle testing to identify compatibility with supplements, for example. But we can also use it to understand where the flow of energy is disrupted in the body. And so one of our core beliefs at MBSR is that the body is a flow system that is designed to heal itself. And Dr. Jen touched on this. So our bodies don't only need positive input, such as nourishing food, a healthy environment, a growth mindset, for example. It's also really important to identify what could be taxing your energy, preventing elimination of waste or stalling that emotional regulation. So Dr. Jen, will you talk to us more about the body's desire for homeostasis?
Absolutely. So as you said, the natural or healthy or desired state of energy is to be in flow. So first we're talking about energy wants to flow, energy wants to move. That's what it's designed to do. It's designed to move in waves and transmit. Our bodies want to be in balance. And that desire is the homeostasis that you mentioned. Homeostasis stands for sort of similar state. So our bodies, our cells, the processes that we're running internally, they're all designed so that we can survive and thrive with a certain internal environment. And we are also designed to be able to regulate ourselves and maintain that balanced environment. So to heal ourselves, like you said. So if our body senses an imbalance, it will try to automatically bring itself back into balance. So for example, if you're outside and you're really hot, you start sweating because your body is trying to unconsciously just make yourself cool. So this happens most often in our unconscious and subconscious. We don't even notice sometimes all the ways in which our body is working on our behalf to try to keep us balanced during the day. So this picture you just brought up is just a little seesaw example of one way that this looks in our nervous system. And this is just an example of us trying to create some balance in our nervous system between our sympathetic nervous system and our parasympathetic nervous system. This is our fight, flight, or freeze, or rest and digest, as you can see here, or the gas and the brake is another way to think about it. And what's important here is neither of these are inherently good or bad. So it's not like sympathetic is bad and parasympathetic is good. I think sometimes it gets that rap for good reason. However, we need both of these to work for us to survive, right? So if a car is cutting us off in traffic, we need that sympathetic nervous system to take over and put us in fight, flight, or freeze so we can slam on the brake before we have time to think rationally. Now, what should I do about this car that's coming over, right? So we don't want to have to think that hard. We just want it to take over and do it. But now I'm all stressed and I'm super vigilant. I'm hyper aware, right? Because a car just cut me off and thank goodness I stopped it. But now I know I can kind of come back down. Like, all right, the threat is gone. I need to calm down, right? And so the parasympathetic nervous system will swoop in, send the chemicals it needs to counteract all of the cortisol and the stress hormones that I just got flooded with in order to do the right thing. So we need them both, but we don't want to have one more dominant than the other. So we can have chronic stress and anxiety on one hand. We could have depression on the other hand. We really need to be in a flow state where we're ready to respond. So that flowing, right? If we're not in flow, if we're dominant on one side or the other, we're stuck in one state or another, so to speak. It doesn't allow us to be in that flow state where we're ready to respond to whatever's coming at us. Now, you mentioned that there are things that we can do mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually that impact our body environment. And the bottom line is that if our energy isn't flowing in our bodies the way it needs to, or if we're out of balance, we can't promote that healthy function and really allow our regulatory system to work on our behalf. And it will impact our health on just about every level.
Thank you so much. And as Dr. Jen mentioned briefly, we are creating other videos that go into this more. So what do we mean by stored emotion? What do we mean by we need to process the energy, process those stored emotions, and talking more about what she briefly touched on, the importance of that nervous system, how it's dynamic, right? We don't want just a perfect 50-50 split all the time. We want it to be responsive in an appropriate way. So I want to dive more into quantum physics, but I will take a second to explain why this is pertinent to our conversation. So as mind, body, spirit release practitioners, we talk about quantum physics because there are a lot of practitioners that see clients virtually, meaning they are muscle testing the client and facilitating energy work remotely. So naturally, this feels pretty abstract at first. Even if clients have experienced muscle testing in person, it can be challenging to understand how this could be effective at a distance without physical contact. So Dr. Jen, you touched on this earlier, how in quantum physics, waves or particles are formed by adding energy. Can you expand on that?
Absolutely. It's definitely a concept that requires like a new way of looking at the universe. So I think this is a really exciting topic. So let's put up the picture of the water wave that we put in here. Okay, so I mentioned earlier about the second universal law of vibration, but there is a first universal law. And the first universal law, it's sometimes called the law of divine oneness, but it really states that all things are interconnected. And that extends to consciousness as well. So all of the energy in the universe is connected, consciousness is connected. So imagine the universe like this water that we see here in the picture. And I think we can all sort of understand how, for example, all the water in the oceans are interconnected. What you do in one part of the ocean actually ultimately affects what happens in the other part of the ocean. Now, we add to that what quantum physics tells us, which is that everything has a wave function. A wave function is like a big equation of probabilities, like a chance, like what's the likelihood that something's going to happen? It's called a probability wave function. And what it really is saying is it likely to be in this place? Is it likely to be in that case? Is it likely to be in this state? So that's how quantum works. Everything has a wave function associated with it. It's not in one place or another all the time. It just has a likelihood of being somewhere and showing up somewhere. So what that means is everything exists in all of its possible states until it's acted upon, until something happens, until we observe it or measure it. Mm-hmm. So I call the quantum field the realm of the possible, because it's all the things that could possibly happen until we decide what we want to do about it. So like this water in the picture, all the possible waves that I could have made in the water exist in that water until I do something, right? So what I do is I add energy to the water. I add energy to the quantum field. When I do that, I create a water wave. You can see it there, right? I transfer my energy. The finger is transferring its energy. I poke it with my energy, right? And it creates a vibration or a wave. And in quantum, once you measure or interact with that wave function that I mentioned, where it could be in any state, it says, oh, okay, you want it here? I'm collapsing down into this location. Right here I am. Got it. Right. Understood. I will be here. Right. So it collapses it into that particular state. That's how we measure it and observe it. So like this picture, once I poke the water with a particular energy, a particular wave appears. Once the wave appears, I can measure it. I can see it. I can describe it. I can say, oh, it's this frequency and the amplitude of the wave is this high and it goes for this distance and all of that. Right. So until then, however, it's just a big sea of potential energies waiting for me to come and poke on it, right? So this is really what we mean, Amanda, by manifesting something from the quantum field. This is it. We need to come and interact with it to manifest something. And we started off talking about how everything is energy, and it's just all there waiting for us. All the energy is waiting for us in the quantum field. Now, our energy determines, our energy field, our energy signature determines the nature of what we bring to the quantum field for creation or for manifestation, right? Our energy, what we poke it with, what we create with, it's up to us, right? Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about co-creating with the universe, what we really mean is we're consciously manifesting something with the universe. Now, the challenge is we also manifest with our subconscious or our unconscious mind, because all of our consciousness impacts our energy signature. And so our reality is really our own making. Some of which we're aware of and some of which we're not, which is what I find really fascinating.
It really is. And I think you all will see why I was just so excited to have you, Dr. Jen, explain this, because you can conceptualize these massive concepts and make it understandable, digestible for someone who did not study physics. Maybe was not an astronaut and talking about poking energy, and make it just really, like I said, digestible. So to bring all of this together, can we discuss how energy becomes entangled and why this applies to MBSR? So when we energy test remotely, the practitioners use their own nervous system to test on behalf of their client. So we sometimes call this proxy testing. if I am your practitioner, Dr. Jen, I'm using my own body, my own nervous system to test on your behalf. So can you help us understand how practitioners are actually able to energy test at a distance, how the practitioners are able to pick up on what might be affecting someone's mind, body, or spirit if they are not physically making contact through muscle testing?
Yeah, so in that case, the poking breaks down, right? So,
Yes.
so we'll definitely come to explain why you don't need to actually be there poking and how we do it. So, okay, we've established already that everything is connected, right? And that our consciousness is connected, and that contributes to the energy we're bringing to the quantum field so that we can create things in our reality, right? So our consciousness, another way that we like to say this in MBSR, our intention is what is going to infect what we measure and what we manifest, right? There's another way to look at this too. I think it's kind of fun to talk about another piece of the puzzle, which science is still discussing, whether or not our universe is holographic. But I like this example because I think that it creates a new way of thinking about how our universe is accessible from all ways. So we have one more picture of a hologram. Now, a hologram, you might have seen it in this form in movies and TV, and you might have seen one in real life somewhere at a museum. You might have also seen a 3D photograph, like if you ever go to an amusement park and you see holograms where when you move, that looks like it's following you. What those are is they work by taking all of the information that's in the three-dimensional space and it converts it into a two-dimensional image, right? So it takes the room, if I'm going to photograph a room, and it puts it onto a 2D photograph. And so the reason why that's important is because all the information from that 3D space is embedded in that photograph, meaning no matter where I look in that photograph, I get all the information. I get the entire 3D picture. So you can see here with the globe, no matter where I move my head or how I turn my hand, I get the whole picture in the globe, okay? And that's what kind of makes it look like it's following you, by the way. So if you extend that to the universe, everything is connected, we said. So everything that exists contains the information of everything else that exists, if we go with the holographic thing, right? So anywhere in the photograph has got all the information of the photograph in it. Everywhere in the universe has all the information of the universe in it. So in a sense, no matter where we are in the universe, we can access the information that we want. So let's look at a simple example of this. So we can take this picture down for this next one, so I can just use hand gestures. So let's look at a radio signal and a radio antenna. Radio stations around the world are broadcasting all the time, simultaneously, all their shows. And assuming that you had a powerful enough antenna, no matter where you were on Earth, you could tune in to any signal you wanted to listen to any station that you wanted. So how does this work? Most people think that antennas are just there to collect radio signals, but they're not. They're actually transmitting and receiving. So what that means is, this is the law of attraction. This is how this comes into play. So your car radio, for example, let's say you want to listen to a certain station. The way it works is it sends out a signal that has the frequency of, or the energy signal, as we've learned, of the station you want to listen to. So it's sending it out, and what's happening is all in the air are all the radio signals from everywhere else in the world, and the one that matches it gets pulled in, and it interferes constructively, it's the physics term, interferes constructively with that wave, and it amplifies it. And it interferes destructively with all the other waves and all the other radio stations that you didn't want to listen to, and those kind of fall away, right? So you're left with this amplified signal that's the one that you are looking for. So it's a match. They combine together, they amplify, okay? So then you're really filtering out what you don't want, right? By being very clear on what you do want. I want to hear this, right? So you're broadcasting that, comes in, it matches, attracts to it, amplifies, okay? So I think you can see too how, if you notice that if you're ever using a radio dial, and this might be dating myself here because I did use radio dial, that if we are just off the station we want, we get static, or sometimes we hear more than one station at the same time. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but what that means is we're not being super clear on exactly what station we want. We're not dialed in exactly. We're a little off. So the waves are interfering with each other, but you're still getting some remnants of ones that you don't really want, but your intention probably isn't clear enough, or your frequency isn't tuned enough, right? Your dial's not quite in the right spot. So you're not getting exactly what you want to hear. You're getting a little mix of things. And so this is really how we filter things. And I think it's a topic we're going to cover in another video, getting into how our story, our experiences, our life past acts as our filter about what we do and don't bring down and create from the quantum realm. But for today, what we're going to talk about, and that's important to understand, is that in order to hear what you want, your frequency has to match what you're looking for. And that's what it means to create with intention.
So I remember as we were walking through this and discussing, you gave that example, and it really helped me understand from a physics perspective what I'm going to discuss next. And so, you've talked a lot about how our intention or our focus impacts the outcome. So as you just said, when we want to hear a specific kind of music, we turn into a certain radio station. So it leads me into the question about how our distinct energy signature impacts others. So I'm bringing this up because we receive this question all the time. Why does one practitioner muscle test me and get this response while another practitioner muscle tests me and gets this answer? And let's say they have the same question, right? Or they're working from the same prompt. So Tracy Southwick, who's the founder and creator of MBSR, says this expression a lot. We're all building a different bridge. And what she means by that is, as a practitioner, we have different educational backgrounds and training and different opinions on the best course of action to help our clients. So our unique approaches are not necessarily right or wrong. They're just different ways to help the client achieve their goals. And so, for example, you could have two practitioners muscle test the same client to see what is stressing their nervous system, and the practitioners uncover different information. So Dr. Jen, if I am interpreting this correctly, what you're saying is, from the practitioner's consciousness impacts the information or the output that we're seeing from the client. Or said a different way, the practitioners are measuring or shedding light on different aspects of a client. Is that correct?
Absolutely correct. So great way to think about it and describe it. So our energy signature, right, consists of, among other things, what we talked about, our conscious and unconscious mind, our thoughts, our beliefs, our experiences, our memories, our genetics, all of that. That's what goes into our energy signature. So one practitioner's training and knowledge and beliefs and experiences is different from another. And so their makeup will be a little bit different of what's in their signature, so to speak. And remember, we just learned that that equates to sort of the filter with which we're looking at something, or the lens with which we're looking at something. So that filter will be different. They will bring up different elements or aspects of a client, but they're all in that client, right? So all those aspects are very relevant, and they're just pulling out different ones. So I know I've had readings done with you, I've had readings done with Cheryl, and I get such a different perspective, even on topics that are similar, but it makes a really rich experience when you can see all of those different viewpoints. And even the way in which they communicate and your intention settings are different. And it's just so lovely. So it's a really beautiful thing to see how this all works. But because we're all matching the client in some way, that intention setting is what really allows us to be focused on what we're trying to pull up for the client. And as MBSR practitioners know, setting an intention is actually both art and science, right? It's not quite as easy as turning the radio dial. It's really a very individual and personal kind of experience. And so I hope we've shown today that while there is definitely science that we can use to help us understand what's happening when we're practicing MBSR, there's so much of a person's spirit and gift in this process. And let's not forget that the scientific community are also still debating and discovering and trying to learn how all of this works. But ultimately, it's just a fantastic blend of art and science and spirit, and just the really heartfelt intentions and the wisdom, the experience of our amazing practitioner community that really creates transformation for our clients.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jen. And that's exactly what I love about your perspective, is that you can really ground and explain these concepts and why this is possible, but you leave plenty of space for, it's not like we have all this figured out perfectly. So like you said, there's a good bit of trust and faith that goes into this as well. It's not incredibly simple, buttoned down in every way. So thank you so much for joining us. As we mentioned, there are other videos that we're making and distributing to you soon, but I just wanted to share here, and if you wouldn't mind just telling people where to find you.
Yeah, sure thing. So right now, the best way to get me is email. In about 3 or 4 weeks, my website will be up. I've been doing mostly by referral and word of mouth, so I haven't had a chance to get the website up, but it's coming within a couple of weeks. So my email is there. My website will be there shortly. And I'm happy to do not only MBSR work with folks, but I also feel very passionately about coaching and human design, and Reiki is always a great thing to throw in for good measure as well. So happy to work with anyone on any level that they're interested in. So, and thank you so much for having me and for inviting me to do this. And I hope it's helpful for all of our practitioners.
Yeah, I know it will be. Thank you so much, Dr. Jen. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.